Hey everybody, HomeSliceHenry here, and in today's video, I'm going to be showcasing a powerful climbing team for the Halloween Cup Great League Edition that features my shiny Greninja as a sweeper. Now this team, I went 9-3 in the battles that I used with it, and the elo range started low 2900s and ended upper 2900s. The team features Shadow Kanto Grimer as the lead, Return Alolan Raticate as the safe switch, and the ever-deadly Greninja as a closer. So without further ado, let's hop into the matches and take a look at this very strong climbing team in action in the Halloween Cup. Hopping to the first match, we've got Shadow Grimer versus Shadow Grimer, a mirror lead. I'm going to stay in this matchup to start with, play the ones, and then look to switch out. I run a very high rank Shadow Grimer, which means that in a lot of situations, I have more health, but in this situation in the mirror, I'm going to be losing CMP most of the time. My opponent actually ends up letting that go. In comes Mandibuzz. I immediately pivot into the Raticate, and the Raticate save switch works like a charm as I'm able to lure out Azumarill. Azumarill would be terrible for Greninja. Greninja completely walled there, but Mandibuzz, which they saved in the back, Greninja can absolutely destroy. So now I'm just in a winning position. Alolan Raticate is so neutral in this meta. Not only is it very bulky, as you see, they're shaking off a super effective play rough, but its typing and coverage just means that it basically has no hard counters in the meta outside of someone choosing to bring something like a Pangoro, which you would still want to bait out so that way Greninja would not have to see it. And now we have an endgame where it's Greninja versus Mandibuzz, and this should just be a strictly winning endgame for me. I can spam out these Hydro Cannons thanks to Water Shuriken. The Hydro Cannon spam is just absolutely unreal. Greninja's very frail, but since Snarl does basically no fast move damage here, it can actually survive 2 Aerial Aces. So I am going to farm up, fire off another Hydro Cannon. Hydro Cannon into the Mandibuzz is going to be no shielded. Mandibuzz fires off its energy, and from here this is just a very straightforward win, as now I can just save the shield for the Grimer. Opponent is going to switch into Azumarill. I fire off the Mud Bomb. If they shield, I shield back, farm down, and win CMP over the Mandibuzz. If they let it go, then their Flyer is going to get butt slapped down. So either way, we're able to take the win. Grimer versus Clodsire in the next match. This is a very positive lead when shields are up. Opponent's going to save switch into Greninja, and Greninja is going to fire off its Hydro Cannon. I'm going to be committed to shield here, as Hydro Cannon would do way too much damage. These Mud Slaps are shredding through this Greninja. While I can win the 2 shield, I don't want to stay in. Instead, I'm going to bring in my own Greninja. I fire off the Hydro Cannon, and I win the CMP tie, denying my opponent's energy unless they're willing to shield. And they are willing to shield. So they've given up all their shields for the rest of this match. I do take massive damage from that Hydro Cannon, and I am going to commit the shield here. As they do go for another Hydro, I'm going to go for the Night Slash. Night Slash will be able to pick up the knockout here, as my opponent just doesn't have a lot of health left, and Greninja gets the boost. Oh my goodness, we're off to the races. In comes Clodsire. I make the Hydro Cannon. Clodsire's very bulky, but this is a boosted Greninja. That's a one-hit KO. In the back is Moltres. Moltres cannot farm down, and shiny Greninja on an absolute rampage one-shots the Galar Moltres, and that is a good game. We move to the next match, leading Grimer into Fortress. Definitely happy the Fortress isn't on our back line. There's a Greninja safe switch, so I'll time my switch out into my own, so that way I get the catch and the sneak. Catching a Night Slash is actually very nice because now I'm at a health advantage. So if my opponent survives this Hydro Cannon, then I know that I'm guaranteed to survive it as well. So when my opponent survives, I can just no shield this. Hydro Cannon not going to knock out, and I get a Water Shuriken down, and I leave with a Hydro Cannon loaded. This is very nice. My opponent can send back in the regular Fortress. Regular Fortress is quite bulky, so Hydro Cannon is actually not going to do a lot of damage here, but still, any chip damage will be valuable. I'm going to send back in the Grimer. Grimer going to fire off a Mud Bomb. One of the reasons why it's really nice to have the Shadow Kanto Grimer is just the fact that Mud Slap and Mud Bomb do not get same type attack bonus. You're a pure poison type, so that extra damage makes those moves help feel a little less fraudulent. In the back, my opponent actually has a Alolan Raticate, so they're running an identical backline to me, except they are running the Shadow Alolan Raticate, and now I can bring in my own. I do think the Purified one, like the Shadow's definitely very good. I really like the Purified option because Return is just such an amazing move, especially getting that same type of attack bonus. My opponent does make another Hyper Fang, so I will respect it with a shield. In comes the Fortress, and this should basically just be game over at this point. I have too much energy on the Raticate. Opponent realizes it, and they're just going to let it go. We move to the next match, leading Grimer into Clodsire. Amazing lead for us. Opponent save switches into Raticate, and this is just definitely a Raticate meta. Raticate is just insanely strong on the save switch. I will fire off the Mud Bomb just to get a little bit of chip damage and bring in my own Raticate. Since there's Shadow, I'm a little worried about a Hyper Beam, but my thought process was I should live a Shadow Hyper Beam because Raticate is really, really bulky, and I will fire off a Crunch because I'm just looking to pick up the knockout. I want to remove their Raticate from the field of play. My opponent ends up shielding, they get debuffed, and suddenly I'm thinking, I'm ABA strong to Clodsire. I don't need switch. So I just let it go. Now I can bring in Greninja, go for a Water Shuriken down, and the Clodsire just has nowhere to run. My opponent, if they're aggressively switching into Clodsire, they are in trouble. They do not want to deal with a Greninja that's up energy and up a shield. That's honestly the scariest thing you can see in this cup, is a Greninja up energy and up a shield. They're going to go for the Sludge Bomb. I will commit the shield, and I just have so much energy. I have 2.5 Night Slashes loaded now, so I can fire off the Night Slash. Down goes the Clodsire. What is that final Pokemon in the back? It's going to be a Shadow Sharpedo. From the typing, I thought it was going to be a Greninja. Look at the spice from my opponent. Oh my goodness. I just have to watch for the switch. There it is, and I'm able to switch right after they do to absorb the energy as they go for the Crunch. That Crunch did so much damage, but Sharpedo knows I have a Hydro Cannon loaded. Their only win con is that I didn't have a move banked, but I do. So Hydro Cannon will be able to secure the knockout, and we get a win against a very spicy trainer. We see a good lead in the next match here, leading the Shadow Grimer into Azumarill. That's one thing I like about the Shadow Grimer, is it's a Mud Slapper that does do very well against Azumarill. Because they get to Ice Beam, when we get to Sludge Bomb, we win CMP, and that Sludge Bomb damage just goes absolutely insane. After this, I'm just going to switch out into the Raticate. It's a simultaneous save switch. They bring in Astonish to Decidueye, and they just quit immediately. Trainer, I am so sorry. Picking up an okay lead in the next match, leading Grimer into Charjabug. Opponent is going to save switch into Galarian Moltres, and I'm going to respond with Greninja. The best way to defeat something like a Galarian Moltres is to have resistances to Dark, because Sucker Punch is incredibly powerful if it's not resisted. Hydro Cannon is going to land. Here, I will go for the Night Slash just because I do want to try and put pressure on my opponent. The Night Slash is going to be shielded, and my opponent makes a misplay. They did not build up to a Brave Bird. That's only an Ancient Power. I don't have to shield. I get the farm down, and I leave with a Night Slash loaded. I did not want to risk trying to go for the Hydro Cannon there, as I'd probably just get knocked out. Instead, I will just happily take the damage that I can get. Opponent is going to fire off their energy on very good timing. Discharge is going to do quite a lot of damage. In the back, it's Greninja, and I just have to full send the Sludge Bomb, and this game is over. Sludge Bomb gets the shield. Now I can bring in the Alolan Raticate. And Alolan Raticate is bulky enough that, again, Hydro Cannon is not going to be a problem. Alolan Raticate, I was really, really impressed with it. Opponent has to throw their energy here. If they overfarmed any more, I just get the return, and they get knocked out. And now, I'm intentionally going to throw 2 and the move. The second Water Shuriken that sneaks will not register. My opponent discharged, so they're on a 3 cycle, and I can get to my Crunch, easily outpacing since they are on the 3 cycle there, and take the win, as Crunch will be able to knock out the Charjabug. We move to the next match, Shadow Grimer into Runerigus. Not a great lead. I have 2 better responses in the back. I throw 1 Mud Slap, save switch into Raticate. My opponent is going to respond with Charjabug. Charjabug is going to strike first, firing off an X-Scissor, but again, Alolan Raticate is very, very bulky, so I can actually withstand that damage. I farm up to the back-to-back crunches. I don't know who wins the CMP tie, so I'm just going to go for good timing here. And my opponent ends up throwing an extra fast move as well. This is great. So I will fire off the Crunch. I get to force a shield from my opponent, and I guess we'll find out here, and it turns out it's not me. So Raticate, very, very bulky, so it's not going to win a lot of CMP ties. X-Scissor is going to knock me out. I bring in the Grimer. They're going to fire off the Discharge, and I'm just going to go for a very nice farm down. I have shield advantage, so hopefully I should be able to sweep with Greninja. Opponent brings in the Runerigus. They go for the Sand Tube. I have a choice to make. I decide to value the health, and as soon as I see that Azumarill, I know that that was a huge error, and I've just lost the game. I thought they were going to have a fast move pressure mon in the back and that I would need the health. But as it turns out, they have no fast move pressure in the back. They have a Azumarill. So if I just no-shielded the Sand Tomb, this would just be a winning position because my opponent could never farm me down. But I used a shield on a move that does very little damage, and now this is basically just a losing endgame for me. Here, I'm going to try and go for a catch, and in doing so, I actually end up losing. I needed to throw the Hydro Cannon first. If I threw the Hydro Cannon first and then forced the shield, I could have been fine. Because then I can farm extra energy on Greninja and win CMP over the Azumarill and actually knock them out. Whereas, unfortunately for me now, I'm not going to be able to knock out the Azumarill. The Azumarill's too healthy. So it's entirely my fault that this game does end in a loss, and I'm just going to top left before they're able to KO me. Shadow Grimer into Azumarill. Another very good lead. We're more than happy to play this out because we just win the CMP tie here. I go for the Sludge Bomb. They're going to CMP tie. And yeah, if the Sludge Bomb lands, I'm very okay safe switching into the Alolan Raticate because I'm just always going to be able to outpace them. And I've basically neutralized the fairy type. So I bring in the Raticate. Opponent is going to bring in Shadow Drapion. Shadow Drapion, Crunch, of course, will be resisted, so they're forced to spam out Aqua Tails. Ideally, I just want to try and get shields down. So I'm going to farm up and go for the return right before they're able to get their next Aqua Tail. Return into the Drapion does get shielded, as they are really looking to invest into this Pokemon. The quick attacks do add up over time. They are approaching about half HP here. The Aqua Tail is going to land. I make the return, but that's perfect counting from my opponent. And these battles did take place right around leaderboard elo, so it does make sense that people would be pretty accurate with that kind of stuff. This is my best way of getting rid of the Drapion, so I will actually commit the shield. Opponent switches into Golurk, and here my opponent is going to make a pretty big misplay. They could have thrown the Shadow Punch instantly there and actually denied my full sneak, but instead they tried to farm up to a potential Dynamic Punch when that's not needed in this matchup. Shadow Punch is going to be shielded. I'm going to overfarm by 1 and play to the CMP tie. Greninja, a CMP winner, as it's able to knock out the Golurk. My opponent still has the Azumarill, but Bubble's going to do very little to me here. So they bring in the Azumarill, they switch into Drapion, and I get the double up. Greninja, you absolute beast. The Water Shuriken is just such a stupid fast move. I love it so much. And now we have the Night Slash for the Azumarill. Night Slash leaves the Azumarill on 1 HP, but I can farm down with the Grimer and take the win. The battle of content creators as I go up against Caleb Pang, and what a terrible lead. Grimer into Golurk. I save switch into Raticate, and my opponent here, Caleb, is now going to switch out and send in Toxapex. I needed to bait out the Toxapex. Toxapex crushes Greninja, and now I can show the power of Return. Return is just such a good move on Raticate. My opponent, they have enough for the Sludge Wave. They full send it. It does massive damage, but look at this. I get the Return. And if my damage values are accurate here, Return KOs, we win switch, in comes Golurk. The issue is Golurk has a lot of energy. I bring in Greninja, and I am going to respect it because I just need to preserve health on this thing. In the back is going to be a Shadow Scizor, and I think the best use out of this Grimer is just as a damage sponge. Night Slash is going to do a lot. I can't afford to give the Golurk farm, so I'm going to undercharge here. I go for the undercharge. Undercharge is basically perfect, and now they're only going to get 1 Mud Slap, and I believe I should be able to make 3 Night Slashes and win this game. But then I see the fast move damage and realized I've just made a fatal misplay. I needed to go for fast moves, not go for charge moves, because this game would have been a tie if I didn't throw a move, but because I threw a move and he gets a sneak, the game ends in a loss, so GG's to Caleb. Hopping to the final match, leading into another Azumarill. Same game plan as always, Sludge Bomb right away. Ooh, this opponent with a nasty catch on a Drifblim. So, Drifblim can't really hurt me until they throw a move, so I'm just going to rebank this, go into the Raticate, and now my opponent is in a position where their Shadow Ball is utterly useless. It's triple resisted. There's nothing they can do. So they get outpaced here as they try and get to a second Icy Wind. I can just knock them out with the -1 Crunch, and I'm still healthy enough that I should be able to survive a Play Rough. Not that I necessarily want to survive a Play Rough, so I am actually going to commit the shield here as they're going to fire off the Play Rough because I feel like Raticate can potentially be valuable in the endgame. Opponent could make their move in 1 more bubble, but they've shown that they like to overfarm. So I'm going to throw 4, switch, get the CMP sack swap. So we win CMP and we get the catch of the Play Rough. Let's go. What a play. And now they have to waste their energy. On a play rough, I can bring in Greninja. Greninja is going to win the CMP tie there, denying their energy. Hydro Cannon knocks out the Azumarill. In the back is a Mud Shot Toxicroak, and this game is over. As I can fire off the Hydro Cannon, my opponent's only hope is that I bait, but there's never a reason to bait here. Opponent sees the writing on the wall and concedes the match. All in all, I think this is a great climbing team. As I mentioned, I started at 2906 elo and ended in the 2990s, so this team worked out amazingly for me. Overall, I do think that Alolan Raticate is kind of just the best save switch in this format. It's really, really difficult to punish an Alolan Raticate up energy because this energy is, in this meta at least, very, very flexible and it's very good at baiting out a Azumarill. So you can bait out the Azumarill and it's honestly not even a terrible matchup as long as you're at full HP. So overall, I'm a huge fan of the Alolan Raticate as a save switch, and Greninja just a devastating, devastating closer. You can use a lot of different Pokemon as the lead. The main goal is you just want something that can beat a Azumarill and something that does have a resist to counter. So you could potentially run something like a Sludge Bomb Clodsire on the lead as well, as that accomplishes a lot of the same things. I just really like Shadow Kanto Grimer. Anyways, thank you guys so much for watching. If you're enjoying the content, make sure to leave a like and subscribe to the channel if you haven't. And a special thank you as always to our members here on YouTube. The support guys provide is sincerely appreciated, so thank you guys oh so very much. And until next time, I've been HomeSliceHenry.